Hello and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. Thanks for watching. My name is Rich Tarani, and our program today is Doug Toombs, who's a senior analyst at Tier1 Research. Hello, Doug.
Hello, Rich. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I thought, first of all, what's your area of specialty?
So I'm a senior analyst with Tier1 Research. We kind of cover the entire sort of internet multi-tenant data center space. So that can cover anything from the actual physical data centers themselves, power, cooling, things along those lines. Once you get the data center built, you got to bring in some telco, get that connected up. And then once you have all that, you start throwing in all the computing equipment, storage, networking, and you're usually selling that of various business models. So it might be colo, might be shared hosting or managed hosting, could be cloud computing. So Tier1 as a group, we kind of cover that whole space of things. I focus a little bit more on the hosting side of things, but we're pretty well versed across the board.
Excellent. So you're the perfect person to answer a question about how internet companies are doing in the economy. Like we're hearing some good numbers from some of the firms. Some are doing better than others, but what's your research telling you?
Yeah, so we actually spend a good amount of time really kind of tracking the space. We get on all the earnings calls for all the public companies that track earnings. We have financial models for them. There's private companies that share earnings with us as well. So 2009 certainly was a challenging year across the board, but overall in all the individual lines of business that we track, we still saw everything move up. So now granted, it didn't move up as high as it had in previous years, but
Sure.
Given the year that 2009 was, that still wasn't a bad thing. So,
Sure.
So I think in the internet multi-tenant data center space, I think we saw a growth of about 17% in 2009. Shared and dedicated hosting was actually the smallest growth at about 8% year over year. Managed hosting actually grew pretty well at 19%. The CDN kind of networks, that grew by about 8.5%. And then lastly, cloud computing really kind of had a big percentage gain because it's kind of a new field and it's
Sure.
part of the numbers there. But that grew about 93% in 2009 to about 350 million in how we're tracking the revenue. And then we're predicting, even better returns for 2010. And I've had some opportunities to talk to a few hosters so far in 2010 to see how that's going. There's a big conference in Texas last week, and I was kind of asking, say, how's quarter one, how's quarter two, and I was having a hard time finding anybody that was saying, the market's having a problem. So this industry kind of fared well through 2009, and now it seems to be back on an upswing.
How's Amazon in terms of percentage of your overall numbers? Is it a big chunk?
Well, Amazon plays in the sort of cloud space, so that sort of infrastructure as a service space, and they are they're a large player in that space. They're probably the largest infrastructure as a service provider that's out there right now. They don't make their numbers specifically public on that, but we do have ways that we sort of kind of analyze things, and we can kind of make guesstimates on where their numbers are there. So they're included as one of the cloud providers in our overall financial model.
Okay. We're hearing more and more about the cloud, obviously. It's just the hottest buzzword of the last couple of years. Yeah. How much of it is hype? How much of it is real?
It's actually very real for a couple of different reasons. So number one, if you kind of walk through a data center that has a lot of colo equipment or just traditional compute equipment, traditional business models, and then you walk through a data center that's all cloud computing, visually you wouldn't really be able to tell much of a difference. So it's not really a fad in that it's not really based on any sort of new technology. The other driving reason behind that is because it's a new delivery model and a new consumption model that really drives some pretty aggressive efficiencies and cost benefits to the point where it's going to be a benefit that organizations just can't ignore. So we see things where organizations, enterprise and customers, if you look at all of their servers inside their corporate data centers, they got maybe a big Oracle server that really runs, it's running hot all day long, but they got a whole bunch of other servers that don't do much of anything.
Right.
We see when, you average those all out across an entire enterprise, 10 to 20% server utilization. You throw all that into a cloud infrastructure, you start getting into 50 and 70% utilization.
Right.
So the amount of performance improvement and the cost benefit that drives is simply too great to overcome. So we see it as generally being another kind of disruptive technology. Kind of going back a ways, go back to kind of the mainframe days where mainframes got somewhat disrupted because business needs in being able to analyze and crunch data was greater than the IT group and the mainframes could deliver in a timely fashion. So these PCs came out. They said, we'll put some PCs out. You can do some of your analysis there. Well, what do we have now but data centers full of expensive PCs, effectively? We see cloud as being similarly disruptive in the market, in that IT maybe cannot keep up with the demands sometimes of the end user communities that they have, and the disruption part comes in when something like an Amazon EC2 is as easy as a credit card away for a business unit to fire up 50 servers on their own without too much difficulty. So that's really going to force organizations to adopt cloud models in terms of their delivery and the consumption from their communities. Otherwise, people will go outside of or around the IT group. And I saw a speech from Bob Mulia from Microsoft the other day. He kind of said the same thing. He said, business units will maybe go around if you're not there. So it's definitely something that's here to stay. The cost benefit that it drives is significant, and the agility, the business agility, is significant.
Those are some major drivers, and there's the arbitrage, of course, which you talked about before. Also, is just the concept of being able to have one massive data center being a lot less expensive than 75 small data centers.
Right. The terminologies may change, but the model of that consumption and delivery, that's going to continue to go forward. So now it's not so much cloud computing, it's infrastructure as a service or platform or software, and there's distinctions and variations in there, but it's all that same sort of delivery model that drives that efficiency. So that trend is definitely going to continue.
Do you track Salesforce in your numbers?
We don't track. We track mostly the infrastructure as a service space. So that's going to be
the apps.
Yeah. So platform as a service is kind of the newest entrant into the market, and Salesforce, and numbers like Salesforce are kind of obvious to find. So we're mostly interested in the infrastructure space. When we quote our cloud numbers, that's generally what we're talking to, is the infrastructure as a service.
How do you keep up with all the new cloud vendors? It seems like I meet a new one every week.
Yeah, really good RSS reader and some filters, and no, we generally have very good relationships with all the service providers that we cover and service providers that we don't. They'll send us all their latest announcements. In a lot of cases, they'll send us a week or so early, so we can get some insight on that and really understand and take it apart and say, okay, but how are you solving this, and understand what they're delivering to the market. So we do use that, number one. But number two, we just go out and we're doing massive amounts of research on who's doing what in the space. And every day when I think I'm not going to find some new software vendor that's got a cloud enablement package, all of a sudden be like, yeah, there we go. There's another one. Just here today at this event, found one already. I was like, well, there we go. Great. There's another one to look at. So we keep getting out there and going to events like this and trying to find everything we can into place.
That's great. Well, thanks for being on the program today.
Thanks a lot.
Nice to meet you.